Hi, everyone. I've been away for a while. I hope to be back online a little more regularly. For now, I'll comment on the recent developments in regard to the horrific shootings in Buffalo and in Uvalde. And astrologically speaking, we would point to the transits of Jupiter and Mars through Aries, sign of firearms, in square to the US Cancer planets, and hence the current national concern with this issue. Now, as far as some kind of resolution in regard to possible new legislation coming out of Congress, I would say I'm pretty skeptical. I think the GOP is just too full-on corrupt to do anything about this. And so the odds that we'll get 10 senators, that we'll get maybe any senators to go along with most of the Democrats to pass something, I think are pretty low. It's possible. I mean, anything is possible. And if it happens, it would be wonderful. But I think it's more likely to be the case that this issue could be a very good issue for the Democrats going into the midterm elections in terms of mobilizing people to vote and or swinging it in their direction through some percentage of voters that were perhaps going to vote GOP and may vote in this direction instead. In terms of possible legislation, meaningful legislation that could be passed, here I would refer you to really good research carried out by astrologer Patrick Watson, wherein he shows that the transit of Saturn through Aries, which it does every 30 or so years, has been linked for about a century with the passing of important legislation in regard to either firearms or some kind of law and order benefit, such as, for example, the creation of the FBI way back at the beginning of the 20th century, and then other forms of legislation that came through. You can take a look at that list, the most recent of which would be in the late 90s. But in every single case, every 30 years, you see progress in this direction. And therefore, it makes the most sense that we would see legislation of some kind in the current environment when Saturn is next in Aries, which brings us into the 2025-2026 period. And in one sense, this is incredibly frustrating because we need this right away. But on the other hand, looking at it in a more positive sense, this would tell us that it's most likely to be the case we're going to have a Democratic administration during those years, because the odds of the GOP ever passing any legislation in this domain, I think, are extremely low. And so, in a sense, that is telling us that the odds are good that Democrats will maintain power going into the second half of this decade. And of course, it would mean some kind of legislation being passed toward solving this horrific problem, which at the moment is causing so much pain in this country.